Have we been asking the wrong question this entire time? Everyone wants to know where the faraway trees lead. But what if that's not their real purpose? What if the trees were never designed to save anyone? They were designed to choose them. Because when you stop looking at the faraway trees as magical exits and start looking at them as living predators, almost every strange event in From begins to make terrifying sense. And here's what changes everything. Not everyone reaches the same destination. Two people can enter different trees and experience completely different outcomes. Some survive. Some disappear. Some arrive exactly where they need to be. Others end up somewhere that makes no logical sense. Most fans call this randomness. But predators don't hunt randomly. They adapt. They separate. They study. And that possibility completely changes the way we should look at every single faraway tree. Because maybe the trees aren't transportation. Maybe they're the town's oldest hunting system. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every danger in the town follows a pattern. The monsters don't simply chase people. They manipulate them. The voices don't just speak. They imitate trust. The visions don't reveal truth. They reveal only enough truth to keep someone moving. Everything in this place creates the illusion of choice. So, why would the faraway trees be different? That's the real mystery. Everyone assumes the trees exist to help people escape impossible situations. But has the show ever actually confirmed that?
No.
The characters believe it. The audience believes it. But belief has never been evidence in From. The town survives because people believe the wrong things. And this is where it gets darker. Think about every time someone uses a faraway tree. They're almost always desperate, afraid,
Cornered.
emotionally unstable. They're not making rational decisions. They're acting on instinct. That's exactly when a hunter has the greatest advantage. A frightened animal always chooses the fastest escape, even if that escape leads straight into a trap. This is the detail everyone missed. The trees never advertise themselves. Nobody explains how they work. Nobody built signs pointing toward them. People only trust them because someone else survived using one before. That's not proof they're safe. That's how bait works. A trap only needs to succeed once before everyone believes it's useful. The faraway trees may have been earning that trust for decades, maybe centuries. Think about Boyd. His encounter with the tree didn't free him from the nightmare. It pulled him into an even deeper layer of it. Instead of escaping danger, he found Martin. At first, that looked like incredible luck. Martin offered answers. Martin changed Boyd forever. But look closer. Everything that happened after that moment made Boyd's life worse. He carried something back with him. Something that spread. Something that changed the balance inside the town. So, ask yourself one question. Did Boyd find Martin? Or did the tree deliver Boyd exactly where something else wanted him? Those are two completely different stories. And if it's the second one, then Boyd wasn't rescued. He was selected. Notice how often the town behaves like a living organism. When food disappears, new food appears. When people die, new people arrive. When someone learns too much, something interrupts them. It's almost like the town constantly corrects itself, like an immune system protecting its own survival. So, where do the faraway trees fit inside that system? Most fans see them as shortcuts. But living systems don't create shortcuts. They create circulation. Blood vessels move blood. Roots move nutrients. Nerves carry information. Maybe the faraway trees aren't exits. Maybe they're the town's circulatory system. A network that moves people exactly where the town needs them. Not where they want to go. Where they're most useful. That explains something we've ignored since the beginning. The destinations never seem completely random. They're strangely appropriate. Almost intentional. Sometimes someone arrives somewhere that forces an important meeting. Sometimes they discover information they weren't looking for. Sometimes they accidentally trigger an event that changes everyone else's future. Coincidence? Or placement? Because predators don't simply attack prey. The smartest predators guide prey. One small movement. One wrong turn. One decision that feels completely voluntary. Until it's too late. Look carefully at the monsters. They rarely run. They rarely panic. They smile. They walk. They wait.
Why?
Because something else is already controlling the board. Maybe the monsters don't need to chase people toward the trees. Maybe they already know exactly where the trees will send them. That would explain their confidence. They're not worried about losing their prey. The system already has another move planned. But here's what changes everything again. What if the monsters aren't controlling the trees? What if they're using them, just like everyone else? That possibility is far more terrifying, because it would mean something much older is making every decision. The monsters may think they're hunters. The survivors think they're escaping. But both sides could be trapped inside the same design. A design neither of them fully understands. And suddenly the faraway trees stop looking magical. They start looking mechanical, ancient, purpose-built, like pieces of an enormous machine that has been operating long before Boyd, Tabitha, Jade, or Victor ever arrived. Which raises an even more disturbing possibility. What if Victor never survived because he understood the trees? What if Victor survived because the trees kept choosing not to kill him? And if that's true, then the biggest mystery isn't where the faraway trees send people. It's why they choose certain people at all. Because once you realize the trees may be choosing their victims, every journey through one becomes something much darker. Not an escape, a selection. If the faraway trees are choosing people instead of saving them, then one character has unknowingly been proving this theory since the very beginning. Victor. Everyone sees Victor as the expert on the trees because he has survived longer than anyone else. Whenever someone wants answers, they turn to him. They assume his knowledge makes the trees safer. But look at what the show is actually telling us. Victor never explains how the trees work. He only explains what happened before. Those are not the same thing. Knowing a pattern doesn't mean you control it. It simply means you've lived through it enough times to recognize pieces of it. And this is where it gets darker. Victor doesn't trust certainty. Almost every important warning he gives is hesitant. He says things change. He says places aren't always the same. He says memories disappear. It's almost as if the town itself refuses to stay still. So why do fans assume the faraway trees always behave according to fixed rules? The show never says they do. In fact, it quietly suggests the exact opposite. The trees behave differently depending on who walks into them. That's the detail everyone missed. Imagine two people standing in front of the exact same tree. If this were simply a magical portal, both should reach the same destination. Instead, the results are unpredictable. People call that randomness. But randomness is often just intelligence we don't understand. Think about a GPS. Two drivers can start from the same intersection and receive completely different routes because the system already knows their destination. The road didn't change. The instructions did. Now apply that idea to the faraway trees. Maybe the tree isn't responding to geography. Maybe it's responding to the person, their memories, their fears, their role in the town. If that's true, then every trip through a tree is a calculation, not a coincidence.
Look at Boyd again.
After entering the tree, he doesn't simply land somewhere safe. He's placed exactly where Martin is waiting. Out of every possible location, out of every possible outcome, he reaches the one person carrying something capable of changing the entire story. Ask yourself, honestly, what are the odds? The answer is almost zero. Unless that meeting was never accidental. But here's what changes everything. Martin never acts surprised.
Think about that.
He's exhausted.
He's trapped.
He's clearly been there for an incredibly long time. Yet when Boyd arrives, Martin behaves almost like someone who expected another visitor eventually.
Why?
How could he possibly know someone would appear? Unless whatever trapped Martin also controls how people reach him. That transforms the entire scene. Instead of Boyd discovering Martin, the tree delivers Boyd to him. The difference is enormous. One is luck. The other is intention. Now, let's move to Tabitha. Her experience with the trees creates even more questions. She reaches places no one expected. She discovers information connected to the outside world. She becomes part of events that reshape everyone's understanding of the town. Again, people call it fate. But what if fate is simply another word for manipulation? Notice how every important discovery in From arrives through movement. Someone follows a voice. Someone opens a door. Someone enters a tunnel. Someone walks through a tree. Information is never handed over freely. The town forces people to travel toward it, almost as though learning itself is another trap. Because every answer creates two new questions. Every discovery pushes someone deeper into the mystery instead of closer to escaping it. That doesn't sound like a rescue system. It sounds like bait. Look at Jade. His entire journey revolves around chasing symbols, visions, and impossible connections. Every clue seems meaningful. Every clue feels close to solving the puzzle. Yet somehow, the more he learns, the less he actually understands. Doesn't that sound familiar? The faraway trees work the same way. They promise movement, but they never promise freedom. Movement and escape are not the same thing. And this is where the theory becomes even more disturbing. What if the trees don't move bodies? What if they move stories? Think about every major turning point. Someone enters a tree. A chain reaction begins. Characters meet. Secrets emerge. Conflicts escalate. Entire storylines suddenly collide. Almost like invisible hands are rearranging chess pieces before the next move. The people believe they're making choices. But maybe the board was already set. This explains something strange about the monsters. Have you noticed they rarely seem frustrated? Even when survivors escape. Even when doors close. Even when someone disappears through a tree. Why aren't they angry? Why don't they react like hunters who lost their prey? Because maybe they know the prey hasn't escaped at all. Imagine watching someone run into a maze that you designed. Would you chase them? Or would you calmly walk to the exit where you already know they'll appear? That confidence has always defined the monsters. It's not arrogance. It's knowledge. Knowledge that the system almost never fails. But here's the most frightening implication yet. What if the monsters don't even need to understand the faraway trees? What if they simply trust them, the same way the survivors do? That would mean everyone in the town, human and monster alike, is relying on something older than themselves. Something that existed before either side arrived. Something that quietly decides where every important person goes. Not because it's helping, because it's organizing. And once you see the trees this way, Victor's behavior starts looking completely different. He doesn't seem fascinated by them. He seems cautious, respectful, almost afraid. Not of where they'll send someone, but of why they choose to send them there. Maybe Victor learned long ago that asking the wrong question is dangerous. Everyone asks, where does this tree go? Victor seems more interested in a different question. Why does the tree want you? Because if the answer to that question is connected to the true intelligence behind the town, then every trip through a faraway tree isn't random.
It's a test.
A recruitment, or something even worse. And if that's true, the trees haven't been helping the survivors survive. They've been deciding which survivors still have a role left to play. And the terrifying part is, the characters may not even realize they've already been chosen. If the faraway trees have been choosing people all along, then we've been misunderstanding the entire purpose of the town. Everyone believes the town is trying to keep people inside. But what if containment was never the objective? What if selection was? That changes everything. Because prisons are built to stop people from leaving. But laboratories, they move subjects from one experiment to another. And this is where it gets darker. Think about how often the town seems to react before the characters make a decision. Food appears when supplies are running out. New arrivals replace the people who die. Visions become stronger when someone gets close to the truth. The weather shifts at suspicious moments. The monsters change their behavior. Nothing feels random. It's almost as if the town is constantly adjusting itself to maintain a balance. Now, ask yourself one dangerous question. What mechanism allows the town to make those adjustments? The monsters don't control every part of the town. The boy in white doesn't seem to control it either. Neither does Victor. Neither does Boyd. So what does? Look at what the show is actually telling us. The only force capable of instantly changing a person's location is the Faraway Tree network. That makes the trees more than mysterious landmarks. They are infrastructure. The hidden system connecting every layer of this nightmare. Think of the roots beneath a forest. You can't see them, but they're constantly exchanging information beneath the ground. One tree detects danger. The entire forest responds. Scientists have discovered that real forests communicate through underground fungal networks, sometimes called the wood wide web. Trees can exchange nutrients and chemical signals through those connections. What if FROM takes that real-world idea and twists it into horror? Instead of sharing nutrients, these trees share people. Instead of moving water, they move stories. Instead of protecting life, they feed something beneath the town. That would explain why the trees never behave like ordinary portals. They're alive. Not alive in the human sense. Alive as part of one enormous intelligence. An intelligence no character has ever truly confronted. And suddenly Victor's drawings become much more disturbing. Everyone assumes Victor draws pictures because he's trying to remember. But maybe he's doing something else. Maybe he's documenting changes. Imagine waking up every day inside a forest where the paths move, the exits disappear, and the trees begin making different choices. Wouldn't you draw everything before it changed again? Victor's pictures may not simply be memories. They may be evidence. Evidence that the town keeps rewriting itself. Evidence that the faraway trees evolve. And here's the detail everyone missed. Victor almost never speaks about the trees with excitement. He speaks about them carefully, almost like someone discussing a wild animal. You don't negotiate with a predator. You learn its habits. You avoid provoking it. Maybe Victor survived because he stopped believing the trees were his friends. Now think about every character who actively searches for answers.
Boyd, Tabitha, Jade.
Each one follows clues. Each one pushes deeper into the mystery. And each one eventually reaches a point where the town responds. Not with answers. With movement. Boyd is sent to Martin. Tabitha reaches places that transform the entire mystery. Jade is overwhelmed by visions that seem designed to keep him chasing the next clue. The pattern repeats. Every searcher is relocated. Every truth seeker is redirected. Almost like the town refuses to let anyone investigate one place for too long. That doesn't sound like coincidence. It sounds like control. But here's what changes everything one last time. We've assumed the faraway trees choose destinations. What if they actually choose timelines? The show has repeatedly blurred the boundaries between memory, vision, prophecy, and reality. Characters experience events that don't fit a simple linear timeline. Victor remembers things others never saw. Tabitha encounters impossible connections. The boy in white appears exactly when history seems ready to repeat itself. What if the trees aren't simply transporting people across space? What if they're placing people exactly where the story needs them to be in time? That would explain why every journey through a tree creates consequences that echo far beyond the moment itself. The trees wouldn't be moving survivors. They'd be preserving the cycle, keeping every piece exactly where it belongs. And suddenly, the title Faraway Tree takes on a completely different meaning. Maybe faraway doesn't describe distance. Maybe it describes perspective. The trees don't send you far away from the town. They send you far away from the life you thought you were living. Every person who enters one comes back changed.
Sometimes physically.
Sometimes emotionally. Sometimes carrying knowledge. Sometimes carrying something much worse. No one returns untouched. Because that's what hunters do. They don't always kill their prey immediately. Sometimes they mark it. Sometimes they follow it. Sometimes they let it keep running because it's leading them somewhere even more valuable. So, what if every person who walks through a faraway tree leaves with an invisible mark? A purpose they don't understand. A destination they believe they chose. When in reality, the choice was made long before they ever stepped inside. And that leads to the most terrifying possibility of all. Maybe the trees aren't deciding who survives. Maybe they're deciding who becomes important enough to sacrifice later. Because every major character who has passed through the network has become central to the town's larger plan. Not freer, not safer, more necessary. And if the faraway trees are truly part of an ancient intelligence, then every journey we've celebrated as an escape has actually been another move in a game that began decades, perhaps centuries, before Boyd's family ever drove into town. Which means the biggest mystery isn't where the next tree will take someone. It's who or what is waiting at the end of that journey. Because if Season 4 finally reveals that the faraway trees have never been escape routes, only hunting paths, then every time a character reaches for a tree in desperation, they won't be running away from the nightmare. They'll be walking exactly where the nightmare has been waiting for them all along. So before the next person steps inside a faraway tree, ask yourself this. What if the tree doesn't take you where you want to go? What if it takes you exactly where it wants you to be?